What if I told you that Ferrari has found a way to circumvent the FIA technical tests without breaking any rules? Ferrari entered the 2026 season carrying the weight of a deep wound that has not completely healed. What happened in 2025 wasn't just a bad campaign. It was a public humiliation, a painful display of how one of Formula One's most legendary teams could lose its way so completely. They didn't win a single race. They didn't get on the podium regularly. And most alarming, they finished the season fourth in the Constructors' Championship, behind teams that until recently were considered minor. That car, the SF25, was singled out by all quarters of the paddock as one of the most frustrating machines of the modern era. From the first race, its structural defects were evident. Lewis Hamilton, in his debut season with the Scuderia after his controversial departure from Mercedes, went so far as to describe the experience as an emotional roller coaster, and on several occasions spoke openly about feeling lost with the car. It wasn't an exaggeration, the data backed it up. The inconsistency in fast corners, the constant errors in balance changes, and, above all, an erratic behavior that not even the engineers could fully explain. Charles Leclerc had no softer words. In Hungary, he even said that the car was impossible to drive. The team radios during the Grand Prix weekends became a concert of frustration. Complaints about the power steering, about the rigidity of the rear axle, about the inability to read the car's behavior lap after lap. A true technical chaos. And the root of the problem lay in a technical decision that, at the time, was celebrated as bold. Ferrari had adopted a pull rod suspension setup on both the front and rear axle, attempting to follow the path of Red Bull. The result was a disaster. While the front axle behaved with some consistency, the rear axle showed uncontrollable flexing under load. A catastrophic imbalance that made the car feel split in two. But if the technical part was a problem, the psychological part was even more devastating. Fred Vasseur, in an attempt to redirect course, made an extreme decision. He completely froze development of the SF25 after just 5 races. All the resources, all the wind tunnels, all the energy of the team was poured into the 2026 car. What seemed like a logical move ended up being a shot in the foot. Ferrari forced itself to compete for 20 more races knowing there would be no improvement. An unbearable situation for any driver, but devastating for a structure as exposed as Ferrari. Vasseur himself, months later, acknowledged that he had underestimated the emotional damage that decision would cause. Without evolution, without hope, without anything new to try, the team simply survived week after week. The most painful image came in Austin, when the SF25 was disqualified for illegal wear of the wooden plank skid block, something that had not happened to Ferrari for almost 2 decades. The car was so low, so unstable, and so unpredictable that they couldn't even meet the minimum regulations. It was the final confirmation that that car should not have competed for an entire season. And yet, he did it. While the Formula One spotlight was on driver disputes, lineup changes, and classic preseason controversies, Ferrari operated quietly. In the wind tunnels, simulation laboratories, and restricted areas of Maranello's technical department, something completely different was brewing. It was not a simple improvement. It wasn't a new aerodynamic piece or a reinterpretation of a spoiler. It was a conceptual break. Ferrari was designing a suspension that would behave like no other. A system that would make legal what until now seemed impossible. The key was in a material that has been used for decades, but never in this way, anisotropic carbon fiber. Unlike traditional carbon, this type of fiber allows the structural behavior of the component to be manipulated depending on the direction in which the force is applied. It sounds technical, and it is, but what matters is this: Ferrari has managed to design suspension arms that can be completely rigid when inspected by the FIA, and flexible when under full dynamic load in full race when it really matters. This is where the genius comes in. The FIA performs static tests in the garage to verify that no suspension component has illegal flexibility. These tests are performed in specific directions under controlled loads. But the SF26 is built to deform outside of those directions, under transverse or combined forces that occur only on the track, such as under hard braking, high-speed direction changes, or over curbs. Thus, Ferrari achieves something that seems like magic, passing all the technical controls without anyone being able to detect what the car is really capable of doing when the traffic lights go out. This passive design with no moving components, no hydraulics, no electronics literally changes the way the car interacts with the asphalt. For example, in a fast corner, the suspension arm can subtly flex to alter the camber angle of the tire, improving ground contact and maintaining balance. In sudden braking, it can modify the geometry of the front axle, helping to stabilize the body and reducing weight transfer. All without a single order from the pilot. All by pure structural engineering. Ferrari has not only designed mechanical parts, it has created intelligent structures. Every layer of carbon fiber on those suspension arms has been placed with precise intent. The orientations, the thicknesses, the composite materials, everything has been calculated to cause a directed, predictable, and exploitable deformation. And what is the real effect on the track? The stability of the car is radically improved. The oscillations are reduced. The aerodynamic platform remains stable for longer, allowing the new 2026 active spoilers that dynamically modify downforce to operate more effectively. An unstable car wastes that technology. A car like the SF26, with its controlled and predictable base, turns it into pure advantage. And here is an even more relevant detail. The system works the same on the front and rear axle. For the first time in the hybrid era, Ferrari has implemented a double pushrod system at both ends of the car. This decision allowed them to reorganize the entire internal architecture of the car, from the cooling ducts to the packaging of the hybrid engine. Everything is optimized not only for thermal efficiency, but to exploit every millimeter of the new aerodynamic platform. As the SF26 began rolling on the runway, it didn't take long for rival engineers to realize that something wasn't right. From the first private tests and controlled filming sessions, Ferrari displayed a level of stability that simply did not seem possible with a conventional passive suspension. In long, high-speed curves, where any other car suffered small losses of balance when transferring weight from one axle to the other, the Italian car maintained a firm posture, as if it were magnetized to the asphalt. When braking, its body remained flat, without excessive sinking of the nose, which allowed greater aerodynamic efficiency of the front wing. And in traction, especially when exiting slow corners, it showed surprisingly clean responsiveness. The FIA, as the governing body of the championship, could not ignore the situation. Quietly, his technical delegates began to analyze the SF26 suspension arms in more detail, applying their usual structural rigidity tests. These tests consist of applying controlled forces at specific points of the component to verify that the deformation does not exceed the allowed limits. And Ferrari, once again, passed each test with absolute normality. According to the regulations, the car was legal. But here's the thing. Those tests are designed to detect uniform flexibility under static conditions. And what Ferrari had built was the opposite. A directed flexibility that only manifested itself under dynamic, complex and combined loads, impossible to replicate in a workshop or in a static testing station. Some regulatory experts began to talk about a legal loophole. Technically, the suspension was passive. There were no valves, actuators, or software to alter its behavior. But in practice, it was doing the same thing as an active system, adapting to track conditions in real time. And that put the FIA in an awkward position. They could not prohibit what they could not prove. And if they did, they would set a dangerous precedent. That structural innovation should also be penalized for being too advanced. Meanwhile, Ferrari gained time and advantage. In the first races, even without completely dominating, their consistency in curves and difficult braking allowed them to strategically position themselves better in qualifying and the race. The pilots felt it. Leclerc mentioned in a post-race interview that the car had an almost intuitive ability to read the track. Hamilton, for his part, simply smiled when asked if the suspension was legal. "Of course it is," he said. "And that's what makes it so good." And at this point, the real tension is not only in the circuits but in the offices. Rival teams have already begun to exert political pressure for the FIA to review the technical regulations. Some advocate changing the stiffness tests and including more aggressive dynamics. Others directly request clarification on the concept of anisotropy in structural components. But the FIA, historically wary of mid-season changes, knows that any wrong move could trigger a legal dispute with Ferrari, and rightly so. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.